Hi guys! Today I wanted to tell my story. Well, unfortunately, one of several times I got fired. Now, I'm sure most people have gotten fired. It happens. Sometimes it's your fault and sometimes it's not. This time it was not my fault. I got fired for getting my period. Yes, you heard me right. And I mean, in that situation, there's really nothing you can do to prevent it from happening. Unless you're one of those lucky people that have a period that is like clockwork. Every day, same day of the month, same time of the month, you get your period. That's great. You can plan for it. But this was back when I was on a lot of medications and took injections and hormones to become a surrogate mother. And but that's in another story. But because I was on all of these different kinds of hormones and things, I had no idea my period was planning on showing up when it did. And I was a receptionist, and it was an OBGYN office. OBGYN. You would think, out of all of the employers you would have, an OBGYN office, which was mostly women, would understand something like that. But I was the receptionist. I was out in the lobby, and I would sign patients in, or actually give them the paperwork to fill out and make sure, they were on the appointment log or whatever. And they brought their paper back to me, and I would give it to the front desk. I don't know why I was a middleman in the first place, but it was a job, and I needed the money. So, not a problem. But I was out at this little table. It wasn't even a real desk. It was just, a little, writer's desk, I guess. And I was training someone that day, which struck me as odd because, an OBGYN clinic, it was open 5 days a week. I worked 5 days a week. And I pretty much worked all day. It was a 40-hour week. And I don't understand why I was training someone in the first place, which is kind of fishy. But I was. And she was seated next to me while I would explain what was happening, how you dealt with the clients coming in and that kind of thing. And I got up to deliver a form to the office. And when I went to sit back down, I noticed a spot of blood on the chair. And it was smaller than a dime. But I told the girl, if I could have a second, I'm going to go run to the restroom real quick. And there's really nothing I could do until my lunch, which was an hour away. So I was like, okay, I will suck it up. I have an hour for lunch. I'll just go home and change and everything will be fine. And I got back and she says, is everything okay? And I was like, no, fine. I said, I just started my period and I'm leaking. And I went to move my coat that is always on the back of my chair. I put it over the cushion of my chair. And she's like, well, why are you doing that? I was like, well, because I'm bleeding through and I have a little blood on the chair and I can't leave until I go home for lunch. And it was relatively a slow day. There wasn't a lot of people there. And the waiting room was a huge waiting room. I mean, it was larger than any other doctor's office I've ever been in. And there was, I can remember distinctly, there were like 3 or 4 people to my left, but they were facing towards the window, and they didn't know what was going on. But I went home, I changed, I got back, and my supervisor called me in, and she's like, was there something that happened today? And I was like, well, I was training so-and-so. I can't remember her name, so even if I wanted to change it, I couldn't, because I don't know what it is in the first place. But I was training her, and I got up and I noticed I had started my period, so I went home on my lunch break and changed. And I got back in time. I wasn't late. And she's like, well, she says, due to it being an OSHA problem or something, she gave me some weird excuse. And there were people in the lobby that complained about it. So we're going to have to let you go. And I was like, what? What are you kidding me? You're going to let me go? She says, if you want to, we'll gather your things for you. And I was like, they weren't even going to let me go back in the lobby and get my coat. And, and I told her, I said, well, I have my coat. My pockets are where I keep my car keys and everything. I don't have a purse. But I had 2 toys that I brought for the kids area. So I'd like those back. And so they went and they got my stuff and they brought it to me. And basically I was fired. And I was in shock because it was just a tiny amount of blood. And they were just up in arms about this. And I went home and I told my husband, I was like, I got fired today. And he's like, why? I says, well, I started my period and there was a little bit of blood on the chair when I got up. And he was like, seriously? Can they do that? And I was like, well, they were worried about the transfer of an infectious disease, and they said somebody in the lobby complained. There were customers complaining about it. And I mean, I was floored that of every employer out there, a female-run OBGYN clinic would fire me over something that was out of my control. I mean, they knew that I was doing injections and everything to become a surrogate mother. They had handled my well checkups that I needed. They have a psychologist or a psychiatrist, I forget the two. They have one of those in residence, and she's the one that interviewed me, and she interviewed me and my husband together. So, they were very involved in the knowledge that I was taking hormones. It is not something that I could predict right there. And, I mean, as it was, my period's all over the place. And, but, yeah. That was weird. I did take them I did sue them for wrongful termination. And they came back with, well, you could have an infectious disease. Somebody could have caught that from the blood on the chair. And I'm thinking, okay, you would have to sit your butt naked with a cut, an open cut on that little speck of blood to possibly catch anything. But I don't have anything. They knew that because it was in my file that I was perfectly healthy. And so we came to the deposition or whatever, and they said, well, they went on and on about the infectious diseases and everything that it could have been. And ironically, two of them had really bad colds. And I was like, well, did you touch the doorknob? Because you could have gotten your cold from that doorknob. Or the person that had the cold could have just gotten us all sick. Now, are they going to lose their job over this? Because I'm healthy. There's nothing wrong with me. And nobody, except for the lady that I was training, which is probably the whistleblower in this situation, but she was the only one who knew what was going on. And she, I guess, complained. But it was just mind-baffling. I mean, it wasn't like this was a reoccurring problem. It was just a one-time thing, and I was immediately fired for it. And, I mean, it's kind of like if you were working at a restaurant and cut your finger and were fired for cutting your finger. It happens. And the reason that they fired me was just unfounded. It was ridiculous. And I mean, naturally, I pulled my files and went somewhere else for my OBGYN needs. But yeah, it was just... So, if you've ever been terminated for something ridiculous like that, and something beyond your control, speak up, say something. Because I did get a settlement. It wasn't a lot, and I'm not going to say the name of the company because it might be in different hands now, and I don't want to get in trouble for bashing them or, what have you. And it wasn't even in Tennessee, it was in another state. But it was insane. And it really put a bad taste in my mouth for that company. And I'm glad I don't have to deal with that anymore because I work for myself. So, but anyways, I hope you got some information or enjoyment or were entertained from this story. It is unusual. And as a woman, if you're female, you have had this problem sometime in your life. Whether it be when you very first got your period, when you were like 12 or something, or it could have happened last week. But, it's a girl thing. And it is actually a discriminating thing. Whether they were female or not, they were in the wrong. And as an employer, I would have stood up for my employee and understood where she was coming from before just firing her. So, but that's kind of the way my life works. So, but But anyways, I will catch you later, and thanks for watching.